Broadcasting from Orchard Park, New York,
and Boca Raton, Florida.
It's the Freight 360 podcast. From freight broker sales tips to sports talk, this podcast is all about helping you grow as a freight broker. We're your hosts, Nate Cross
and Benjamin Kowalski.
Let's talk freight. Yeah, let's talk freight. Welcome back for episode 171 of the Freight 360 podcast. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. If you celebrate Hanukkah, what other holidays we got in the winter time? Kwanzaa?
Yep. That's as far as my...
And happy holidays if you don't have a specific one. But yeah, did you get all your shopping done?
I did not. I planned to do that this morning, and our refrigerator broke last night. So we spent the morning cleaning out our refrigerator and having it replaced. And I was hanging curtains, so I did not get to go.
Is your refrigerator running now?
It is.
You better go catch it.
I know. Throwback to third grade. I remember the prank calls we used to do over the phone. Hey, is your refrigerator running?
Oh, love it. Well, welcome back. We got a all Q&A episode today. We've had a lot of like really cool episodes over the last few months with guests and just special content. And we can't always get to everyone's questions. So, and our Facebook group gets just blown up with questions. So we pulled a bunch today. Some of them are very basic. Some of them are a little bit more in depth. My favorite one we're going to finish up with at the end of the episode. So make sure you stay tuned all the way through. So, But this episode is brought to you by Blue Book Services. Blue Book is the resource that you need if you're transporting fresh produce. Their online database contains thousands of companies throughout the produce industry supply chain. You can easily search their database to generate new sales leads. Blue Book's credit ratings help you avoid companies with high credit risk, and their team can help resolve disputed loads. To learn more, go to producebluebook.com and click Join Today. That's producebluebook.com. Obviously, we had Doug on for 3 awesome episodes over the last few months, and I learned a ton. So,
as did I. I really enjoyed them. I mean, I thought they were great episodes, but I mean, from my point of view, selfishly, I said this on the last one. Not only did I enjoy the interviews, but I really did learn a lot. I mean, it was enjoyable.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, the biggest thing here is I don't care if you've been a broker for 6 months or for 20 years. None of us know everything. So I think it's really important to always be open to learning new stuff and hearing from experts on, their specific corner of the market. So we'll do a little sports update here. So we recorded 2 weeks ago, so we didn't cover sports the last 2 weeks because we had an extra episode in the pipeline there to release last week. The Buffalo Bills are on top of the AFC as it stands right now after a couple of good wins in a row, although they're playing Christmas Eve in Chicago, and that's like Blizzard Central apparently. So we'll see how Winter Storm Elliott pans out over the next couple of days. By the time this episode drops Friday morning, we're going to know a lot more than we do right now on Wednesday as we record here. But a lot of big games going down the stretch here for teams. Did you see the blooper play in the Patriots-Raiders game by any chance?
I didn't.
So it's the end of the fourth quarter. New England and the Raiders are tied. I think it was 24-24. And, New England has the ball. They don't have, you can either take a shot at the end zone or kneel it out and just go to overtime. But what do they do instead? They decide to, they get the ball up the field and the guy running the ball just decides to turn and do a trick pass to the rear. And then that guy does another pass to the middle of the field, and it's intercepted by the Raiders, who run it in for a touchdown. It's literally like they're talking about it being considered the worst play of all time in NFL. Like it'll be the play that's talked about for decades and decades to come. So, all you Patriots fans out there, you've had a rough little
go of it lately.
There, but
I have to Google it after.
It's just terrible. It's absolutely atrocious. Like, you just kneel the ball out, go to overtime, or, maybe take a deep shot or something, but just don't pull a trick play where I get it. If you're losing and you're trying to come back and win, you're going to pull a trick play, and that's
down 4 or 5 points, right?
Yes.
And that's your only shot.
Tied. Right. Yeah, I think there was like 2 seconds left in the game. So
good Lord.
Anyway, so How's what? I didn't see Pittsburgh.
Steelers beat Carolina, and Carolina was favored, so that was a nice win
Oh, that's
on
right.
Sunday. Some
Yeah.
sad news, though, in Steeler country. Franco Harris passed away. I think it was last night, actually, at 72.
Oh, wow.
And Franco Harris was the guy who caught the Immaculate Reception, and the 50th anniversary of that is in like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And kind of gives me like goosebumps. It was just like, I mean,
I was just saying,
sad that he didn't make
I
it.
saw ESPN was going to do like a special on the 50th anniversary of it. So,
Yeah.
man, that's some timing right there. Well, you guys got the Raiders this weekend.
Christmas Eve, I think.
Christmas Eve, yeah. There's a lot of games Christmas Eve. So you guys are the prime time, nighttime game there. Bills are at 1:00 Eastern. They'll be. I'm actually curious if they have to move this game because they're playing in Chicago, but who knows? Neither team's afraid to play in the cold. It's just a matter of this, like if there's talking about like 80-mile-an-hour winds and stuff like that. I'm sure we have a lot of listeners in the Chicago area, so hopefully you guys are safe this weekend. And sorry about the impending loss to the Buffalo Bills. Well, I shouldn't speak too soon, but anyway, elsewise in sports,
I think Tiger and Charlie Woods won the father-son PNC.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get a chance to watch the end of it, but I'm pretty sure they, at least from. Oh no, they finished tied for 8th at the PNC, but they were like all over the news, or at least the golf news on Sunday going into it. I wonder who did win. Either way, but the PNC Championship, father-son championship, was over the weekend. Kind of
Nice.
thing.
Well, good stuff. Let's give a shout out to our friends at DAT, and we'll get into all of your questions today.
Taking the guesswork out of freight with DAT. The DAT Load Board Network is the largest on-demand freight marketplace in North America, connecting freight brokers with available capacity on any lane. Grow your business with tools that allow you to find new business partners. Plus, you can quickly and qualify and onboard new carriers. With the industry's leading freight rate data, you can make clear and confident pricing decisions. Check out the show notes for a free month of DAT Power Express or Trucker's Edge.
Yep, absolutely. DAT did. Are they fully transitioned now to the DAT1, the DAT1, the new platform? I know we're setting up new users differently at Pierce as of like a month or so ago, but whenever there's like a transition in software, I feel like there's always a little bit of tweaking and bugs that get worked out. But they got a really awesome vision and platform that'll be, that we'll all be using in the future here. So I'm looking forward to it. Okay, first question. And again, I'm going to preface this. Some of these are from newbies, and that's totally cool. We'll answer any question. No question's a dumb question. And some of the questions are a little bit more advanced. So here's the first one. The broker is asking, why would a shipper consider 2 pallets to be only 4 feet of deck space when each pallet is 4 feet? Well, you can put 2 pallets side by side.
Or on top
that
of
is
each
your
other.
Answer. So when we talk about deck space, right? So if there's a partial shipment or maybe you're loading up something on a flatbed, you need to know how long, so from front to rear, how much of that trailer or deck are you going to be taking up? So if you're using standard pallets, yes, they are 4 feet. That's how long they are, but you can put them side by side. And there's multiple ways to configure pallets. You can do them the two, like the long way next to each other. You can do them where you have one the long way and one the wide way next to each other, and you have it as kind of like a puzzle piece.
I think they're called pinwheel. Like
pinwheeling, yeah. That's a nickname for it. And you can
stackable. Like there's that one too. Like you can put them on top of each other, which was what I was thinking when I saw that question.
Well, yeah, there's that too. It can be stacked. If you got like E-tracks or racks in the trailer, you could stack them up with dunnage in between. Good questions to ask, though, because some freight can be stacked, some can't be stacked. Some insurance policies don't insure stacked freight when others do. I was actually helping out a guy today. One of my agents, he's moving a $14 million turbine engine or turbine generator, and it's 100 and some feet long, and or 100 and some thousand pounds. Sorry, so overweight, way over the regular insurance value, and we're just going through trying to get quotes on stuff, and we're looking at over $10,000 to insure a single load, but it's going from Houston to New Mexico and it's going on like in the middle of this cold Arctic blast, and you're dealing with possible frozen roads, and you don't want to have an underinsured $14 million piece of freight go sliding off the road and get damaged. That would be a bad day. A lot of paperwork. But anyway, back to deck space. That's what you're looking at, because if a truck has 48 feet of flatbed space and you want to take up a certain amount of it, it'll let them know how much it weighs and how much more weight and length they can fit for other shipments to go on with it. So, but good question. That's I guess 2 reasons why it could be 4 feet. It could be that it was side by side, or maybe it was stacked as well. So good stuff. Next question. And we have covered this one in some detail before, but what is the difference between being a freight dispatcher and a freight broker? Ben, you want to hit on this one, since you had a YouTube short on this with the FMCSA's guidelines. But what would you say, just to break it down Barney style? What are the main differences?
I think the main difference really is that as a broker, you have the ability to, one, accept freight without a carrier. That's one of the real clear ones. Like, if you are a broker, you have the ability to go and take freight from your shipper and go and source any carrier that fits those requirements. As a dispatcher, you don't have that ability at all. You only have the ability to represent the carrier you are working with, right? And also, you have no ability to handle money, meaning you can't adjust a rate con, you can't send a rate con. Like, the only thing you're able to do is to be paid by your trucking company, however they negotiate that with you. Yeah. And that's the real big difference.
Yeah. So like the licensing part of it so the FMCSA licenses freight brokers. We're technically property brokers, right? So that puts us in that intermediary position where we are able to represent our shipper as an intermediary and then go source the open market for a truck. Whereas you're absolutely right that trucking company or that carrier, if they choose to use a dispatcher, it's the dispatcher that is representing the trucking company's MC, and they're getting paid a commission by that trucking company. They're not invoicing any shippers. They're not negotiating rates with shippers. They're not handling money in any way, shape, or form. So they're not insured. They're not bonded. I mean, everything that they do is really under the umbrella of that trucking company, and they can work for multiple trucking companies, but they should have contracts in place. And again, there is a big value add in good dispatching services that have good connections with carriers. But I think there's been a lot of folks that have come out of the woodwork when it was, easy pickings the last year, 2 years, just trying to get your hands on any freight you want. And a lot of stuff, people kind of slipped through the cracks and didn't get caught. And now it's like, now that things have softened up, it's like, all right, well, we don't have a need for all these. Well, we never had a need for all the bad actors, but they're being exposed a lot more easily now, and they don't know what they're doing in a lot of cases. So at the end of the day, you're either licensed or you're not. So
there's a saying by Warren Buffett, I think, or he always says it. It was, you don't find out who's been swimming naked until the tide goes out.
I love that.
And it's like, once it does, it becomes real obvious, right? Who are the bad actors? Who isn't doing what they should be doing? And
I mean, we saw this with freight brokers too, right? Customers, there was so much freight moving. It was such a hot market. If you can call up, anybody could call up a shipper and get them on as a new customer. The question was, could you actually get a truck?
Get a truck.
Exactly, right? But there was so much freight going around, and
the need was just so high.
Yeah, that just about anybody could get their license and be successful to an extent. But there's good brokers, and there's average, and then there's bad ones. And we're going to hit on more of that later on. Next question. This is a girl that was she's new to the industry, and she was looking for different roles as in brokerage. And she kept hearing the phrase book of business. And she said, what is a book of business? What does that mean? Why are people asking about it? Again, this is a 101 level thing. This is just terminology that's common in certain industries. One of them is freight. There's other agent style, like insurance agents, real estate agents. Your book of business is it's your customer base. It's really what it is. We call it, so like in a freight broker's case, your book of business is the list of customers that you work with. But if someone wants to know about your book of business, you could talk about the shippers you work with, the type of freight you move, the volume of freight you move, your margins on that freight, things like that. So your book of business is just a term that we use to describe your customer base. It was new to me too when I got into brokerage, because I always just, like, even on the LTL side, we just call them our customers, our shippers. But I think with brokerage, where it's different is a broker can move from company to company, and that book of business or that customer base will tend to move with them because they're the ones providing that direct service. It's not necessarily the company they work for or that they're contracted with, but it's that individual. So yeah, was that something new to you, book of business, when you got into brokerage, or did you use it in the financial or banking
No,
world?
it wasn't necessarily in banking, but it's used enough in sales, and I was in sales before this. And there are just, I mean, like a couple other ones, like the industry I was in before this, like we would refer to your book of business as your desk, because
Okay.
every one of your customers had a file and they were literally on your desk or in the filing cabinet behind you. So they would refer to like your book of business as like, how big is your desk? Your desk is so and so. And you just kind of pick up that from talking to other sales folks, like, oh yeah, your book of business. So I mean, like, I had heard of it, but again, you're right, it's just your customer base. It's the number of your customers you have, what you're shipping, who you're shipping with, and it refers to all of those relationships that you have.
So it's funny. I have used that phrase before to people that didn't understand it, and I've said, like, oh, do you have a book of business? And they're like, yeah, I took a course and they sent me a book. Like, like,
I took finance
not a literal
101.
book.
I've got accounting 101. Like, I got 2 business books.
Yeah.
That's
It's
awesome.
funny stuff. All right, next question. Back to dispatchers. What insurance do I need as a freight dispatcher? None, really. There's not. I think we talked about this in the past too. We got some repeat questions every now and then, but there is no requirement right now if you're an independent freight dispatcher or a dispatching service. There is no insurance requirement. Is that going to change down the road? It might, but it sounds like when a dispatching service or dispatcher crosses a certain threshold, the FMCSA is going to say you need to get a brokerage license. That sounds like what it's going to come down to, and that would require you to have that surety bond in place. It's currently at $75,000, and it has been for about a decade now. So I'm curious, though. I wouldn't be surprised if the bond requirement goes up for brokers in the next couple of years. I mean, we've seen cost of living increase, and we've seen inflation overall, and you see these different required levels tend to go up and up as the value of a dollar gets thinner and thinner. So would not be surprised.
Value of a shipment, right? Like, there are lots of shipments now that are going over 100K. So I mean, I think the obvious is to at least get it to 100.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the bond is really used for your freight invoices. So like, if you got to figure, if a broker doesn't pay a freight invoice to a trucking company, the truck is going to go file a claim on that broker's bond, and the bond company will issue that payment if they deem it's necessary. So cargo insurance is there's a clear difference between it, but I think you might see cargo insurance requirements or the standard go up as well, because they're at $100,000. You could see the bond go up. I could see it being 100,000 as well. It used to be 10,000. But anyway, back to the dispatching side, what insurance should you have if you are a dispatching business and you've got a whole bunch of employees and you guys are representing a lot of carriers? It's probably not a bad idea to have like a general liability policy. Depending on your state, you might be required to have like a workers' comp policy or something like that. What I always recommend with insurance, because neither one of us is an expert on it. We've brought in outside insurance folks multiple times now to talk insurance. Get with a good insurance broker, right? They can explain, and someone that specializes in transportation. They can not only explain to you what you need and what's valuable to you, but they can go shop the market for you and get you different options. The same way that we go shop the market for trucks, an insurance broker can shop the insurance world for good underwriting insurance carriers. So whenever they're like, same thing with like legal questions and lawyers. We're not lawyers. I don't have an ESQ after my name. I don't know
Yeah.
about you, but
And to be honest, like I think it's best to speak with the people that do that all day, day in
yeah,
and day out, right? I mean, and that's just a good, I think, just tip for life, whether it's business or anything, right? Just go spend 20 minutes and talk to the people that do this all day, every single day. They understand the nuances and they understand how to explain the value you're getting for whatever it is that you're trying to purchase.
exactly. Yep, that's right. We'll give a shout out to our friends over at Lean before we move on here. Lean Solutions Group is the industry leader in nearshore staffing solutions with offices in South America, including freight broker back office operations, accounting, tech development, business development, marketing, customer service, and many other positions. To learn more about the vast solutions Lean has to offer your freight brokerage or agency, visit them at www.leangroup.com. We will have one of our good buddies, Ryan. He's in the marketing department over at Lean. He's going to be joining us in January to talk a lot about some of the really cool, new, and exciting stuff that they got coming up. And appreciate all you guys as listeners. You know, anytime that we have an ad read here, obviously it's supporting your boys here at the show to help us do what we do to give you all of our content for free. But we do appreciate you guys going and taking our advice and talking to these folks. Lean's had a great level of success from people reaching out from the show. So we do appreciate that. And they're going to have more really cool stuff coming up in 2023. So stay tuned for that. Also, they did, if you guys are following us on YouTube, we do have a new thumbnail style. Did you see the first one drop, Ben?
I did. And you know what? I saw one of the YouTube shorts that they released like a day or two ago, and I really like the new bumping they created. We need to get the file to make sure that we have that for our YouTube videos, but I really like the way it came out. I was happy with it.
Yeah, they're good stuff. So even if you guys have like content for your brokerage, Lean does a really good job on their marketing side, and it's extremely cost effective. And what's awesome is like they love working with us, and we love working with them. So it's a huge win-win. All right, moving on with our questions. How do I get on the Selectus load board as a broker? You can't. But let me talk about what Selectus is. So Selectus is it's one of those niche load boards that, like, you have your DAT, right, that shippers, brokers, and carriers can all use. And then you've got like some of your like bulk loads, which is a very niche load board that's used just for just what it's called, bulk loads. So like if you've got like any kind of they've got the hopper, like you got the hopper things with the things
Hopper
at the bottom
bottoms.
that dump out, right?
Yeah.
So if you've got like, I don't know, bulk sand or bulk stone or something like that, like you have a special load board that's going to have a lot of carriers that utilize that load board service. Selectus has really become an alliance between carriers or brokers that are also carriers, where they can share their available capacity and their available freight, but it's in a niche market that's typically your hot shot style. So you'll see literally like dudes posting an F-350 with a 40-foot flatbed behind it, right, for a smaller shipment or a partial. You'll see like your bread trucks, box trucks, sprinter vans. You can post like a full truckload on there, but it's not very common. But so my brokerage, we are on Selectus, and a previous company I worked for, they were on Selectus. But the only way we were able to do that is because we also had an asset MC as well for the company. And Selectus is totally okay. If you're a broker and you're going to post brokered loads, you'll set up using your asset side, but you will post your brokered loads and they will get brokered through your brokerage. And they totally are okay with that. It adds value because it's a very niche market, and it's really cool. I had one of our agents, I feel like I'm giving an advertisement for Selectus right now. Like we should reach out to one of their account people or marketing folks.
Get a kickback.
Yeah, so I got this guy who's trying to move a smaller shipment, and he's like, I'm posting it as like partial on DAT. I'm posting it. I'm looking for like a box truck on DAT, and I'm just not getting a whole lot of stuff. I got him on Selectus, and boom, he's like, it's working too well. He got like 25 emails within like 10 minutes for people like, hey, is this one still available? It's really, really cool how that load board works. So if you do have an asset authority as well, and you're in that space where you're doing expedited or hot shot type of freight, you got to check out Selectus. It's very, very cost effective too. So good stuff. But I guess if you're just a broker and you don't have an asset authority, sorry, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Next question. Ooh, I like this one. What do I do if a driver holds my load hostage, demanding more money? So there's more context to this. They attached a screenshot in the post, and it was a driver talking to another. It was a screenshot from like a driver or carriers group, like Facebook group or something. And it was a driver advising another driver to accept a lower rate from the broker, and then like planning on demanding an increased rate and threatening to not deliver it until they get it. So, and we've heard like they're holding my load hostage, demanding detention, or you name it, any kind of additional money. And we've had this happen at Pierce.
How do you deal with it? What's your policy?
So I mean, I have a different take on it now than I did a decade ago, but we went through a lot with attorneys, and what we found out is that when you have a shipment that is crossing state lines and a carrier is demanding something and threatening to hold your load hostage, they're breaking a federal law. It's not coercion. It's something. So either way, what we do now is we document everything, and as soon as they get like heated, we sounds good. Send out the rate confirmation. They accept it. They deliver it, and then as soon as it's delivered, we send out another rate confirmation with a deduction for the same amount, and we call it like a coercion fine or something like that. Mm-hmm. So it basically comes back down to the same rate. And if you know that carrier's in the wrong, you tell them like, go file on my bond if you want to, right? If you know that they were doing it and they're in the wrong and you're in the right, it ends right there. We had one guy though that like truly believed that he was getting screwed, and he went and he tried to file on it, and never got his money. So
I've had a horror story with that one. I had one, and this was early on in my career. Like I had a load. It was over the holiday. I think it was Martin Luther King weekend, the 3-day weekend, and January. It was either that or no. It was Boxing Day, because this was a Canadian load, and this was going to the island.
We forgot to say Happy Boxing Day to our friends up north. We had that one in too. Yeah.
Anyway. But this load was going. What's the island off of on your side? Was it Nova Scotia?
Prince Edward Island.
Yeah, Prince Edward Island. And they were. So this was a load of Motorola walkie-talkies going to the Canadian military, and they were like $400,000 shipments. So pretty high value, especially at the time. And it was a huge snowstorm, and there was a holiday weekend, right? So this carrier said they couldn't get on the island, and they needed to take the load back. So they drove all the way there, turned around and drove back to their yard, said that they couldn't get there in the snow, and they wanted to put it on another carrier. Then tried to literally hold our load hostage in their yard and made us pay it was like an extra $4 or $5 grand. Like the load was already like $6,000, and it was like, maybe 1,000 miles. And then they were like, well, you got to pay this carrier another $4 grand because they got to go back out there. And then they got stuck, wanted to turn around, and then did it again to us. We had like 3 hostage situations with this $500,000 load going to the Canadian police or military up there over like this holiday weekend. And that's exactly what we did. They were like, I talked to legal, and I'm like, what do you want me to do with this? And they're like, look, just keep the carrier happy, document everything they're doing, write an email, make sure you have it in writing, save everything into the system. And they were like, at the end of the day, we're not paying any of this. And I'll never forget, the load was like $4,500 or $5 grand. The rate cons ended up at almost $15,000. And at the end of the day, they got exactly what they should have got in the very beginning. Besides all of that. And that's exactly how it played out. Exactly what you guys learned. I was curious was literally what they told us. And they're like, you don't want them to take the load. You don't want them to leave it somewhere. You don't want them to do harm to it. So just keep them placated, document the unethicalness or whatever is happening. And they were like, at the end of the day, you pay them what you should have paid them. And as long as you've got that document, they're like, you can file against the bond, but we have all the documentation that shows exactly what happened.
Yeah. It is coercion. That's what it is. I looked it up, but so obviously my stance on it now is different than it was back in the day. I've seen people that have paid it and lost money to try and keep their customer happy, or they tell their customer about it. They freak the customer out, and then they threaten, or they put their relationship with their customer at risk, because now they're like, what kind of carriers are you hiring over there? You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's one of those things that, like, learn it from this question that the listener asked, instead of, making the mistake on your own and losing a customer or money over it. So,
Or worse.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep. I've had people that were like, I'm going to call the cops. Like, and I've had people call state troopers and they're like, what do you want us to do? Like,
yeah, same thing. And I'll never forget, like, because this is the first time this ever happened to me. And I remember calling them and I'm like, there's a risk department. And I'm like, do we call the police? Like, what do we do with this? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, like, and you're right. Like, that's where your head goes. It's like, well, hey, like, are they stealing this? Like, what is going on? Like, what does this, qualify as?
Yeah, it's a strange one, man. It's a strange one. So, but coercion is defined as the practice of persuading someone to do something by using force of threats. So, AKA, I'm going to hold your load hostage if you don't pay me money. So, anyway, is what it is.
Same as extortion.
Don't make that mistake. Oh, extortion was extortion was another one too. That extortion was the main one, and coercion was another one. But yeah, extortion. There you go. Yeah, I'm not a legal expert here by any means.
I think that's from my years of watching Law and Order in my younger days in college.
What is the definition of extortion? Let's see here. Extortion, the practice of obtaining something, especially money, through force of threats. There you go. And it says extortion and coercion are oftentimes they go hand in hand. So,
and isn't blackmail is extortion, but extortion isn't necessarily blackmail, right?
Yeah, blackmail would be, I wouldn't really apply in trucking, but blackmail is like, I'm going to reveal this about you if you don't pay me money. I'm going to reveal this information if you don't pay me, or something like that. But interesting. All right. Next question. To increase my margin, is it better to ask for more money from my customers or reduce the carrier rates?
Both.
Yes. So I was going to say yes and yes. There's and I want to talk about this a little bit, because it's not like, people, they think like, well, if I'm asking for more money that I don't deserve, and I'm going to pay a carrier less than they deserve. And it's like, that's not what it is. Okay. No. But if you are undercharging your customers because you're trying to be a price value, and you're providing great service that's on time, it's not the right way to conduct business, right? You have that whole triangle of like price, quality, and speed. If you're getting stuff done on time and it's high quality, it's going to come at a premium. Those are not going to be bottom of the market rates, okay? So your customer should be paying more than the bottom of the market, right? And then on the carrier side, you don't just take Mr. Carrier and say, hey, can you do it for, well, you could. Like, I need you to do it for $25 less. You can find other carriers, right? So I had to explain this to people and give them context. Like, if a load's going from Chicago to Atlanta, not every single truck that will take that load is already in Chicago. They might have to deadhead 50 miles, 150 miles, or 250 miles, right? So in their eyes, they might be thinking about how much money is it total for me and my costs. So if you can find that carrier that has a shorter deadhead, it's the same lane, but they have less costs and they are willing to do it for less because they're not trying to account for empty miles. Also, what is important to the carrier? Are they looking for just a high-paying load, or does this person need to get back to Atlanta for whatever, right? It could be the holidays or a birthday or a soccer game. I don't know. Anything. So you want to be able to find the right carrier that will get you the right rate and make sure you're charging your customer appropriate rates. And that is how you will get a good margin, right? You're not just being cheap to cut out the other brokers because you don't add service. You're not just taking the first available truck. You got to do your job and truly add value. And the more access you can provide your customer to the market, the better options, more options they'll have, and more likelihood you'll be able to get them a better rate. So
yeah, I think some things too you could do. Like, that's really where you've heard me say this, like, you get a rate or you get a date, but you don't get both, right? Because if you need this picked up in a very short time window, I don't have a lot of choices over carriers that can make that window work. that are empty right now, just like you said, that are within 25 miles or 50 miles of that shipper that can get it from Chicago to Atlanta in your example, right? But if I have 5 days, right, the likelihood, or even 2 or 3 days, right, the likelihood that I find the carrier you're talking about, the one that needs that load, that picks up in the time during the day and has the transit time to get them where they want to go when they want to be there, right? That load to that carrier is more valuable, and in return they might be willing to run it a little bit less, right, price wise. And I remember really where I learned that. Like, I remember I was quoting a lane, and it was when I was at TQL, and we had a lot of lane data because internally they run a lot of loads, so you could see what we were paying. And I remember I was looking at this lane and I'm like, one rate, and it was one broker, because you could see their names, like just ran this load like every day for like the better part of a year and paid like $1,200 to like $1,300 all year long. And then this other broker, same thing, ran it the same amount of time, but was paying like 16 to 1800 like all year. And I remember looking at this and I'm like, I don't understand how both of these brokers, and they were similar freight. That wasn't like the one commodity was very specialized or anything. Like, they were both apples to apples comparison.
Okay.
And I remember going to my manager and I went like, there's something here that I'm not getting. And he's like, oh, best thing to do is just pick up the phone, call the broker, and just ask them what's going on. You'll learn a lot about it. And I got in the habit of doing that. But what I learned was one guy had like 5 to 7 days to run any of the freight he was moving. So basically, all of his customers' loads he posted up every day, and he only booked the loads if the cheapest trucks came through that day. So like the loads would sit there until the right truck at the right rate came through, and he would book them. The other person, the other broker, had to move the loads the day he got them. So he had to pay pretty much fair market rate every single day, and that ended up averaging higher. And
yeah.
that was really what stuck with me. And I'm like, oh, so if you've got to move it on a short time window, you have no flexibility over rate. You're pretty much paying what it costs and probably then some. If you've got a lot of flexibility, again, the chance, to your example, that you get that carrier that needs to be home for their family or whatever that is on that day at that time just goes up. And for that, you tend to have a lower rate that you end up paying.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same concept of like, think about if you want to, hey, I want to go buy a car, right? And I know the kind of car I want. I want I don't know, a black F-150. Yep. Sorry, all you Chevy guys out there that hate Ford. I just picked Ford randomly. If you need a car like today or next week because you totaled your last car and insurance is about to pay out and your rental's about to go away, you only have a week, and you're stuck with whatever inventory is in your area, right?
Might not be black, might not be like. You're lucky if you get an F-150, let alone the interior you want, the wheels you want, the color you want, and
exactly.
Specs.
But if you know, hey, I'm ready to upgrade my car in the next few months, right? Yep. You can start. You've got way more options, more inventory coming in and out of those dealerships. You can look online and see if you can get one maybe at a couple cities over, and you just have way more access.
Even more. Like a perfect example. Like you call your guy at the dealership and you go, hey, if I'm looking for a used car again too, like 1 or 2 years old, low mileage, good maintenance, not beat up. You got 2 or 3 months to wait. Like when that perfect vehicle does get traded in, you get the phone call, then you go pick it up. It's almost a perfect analogy.
Exactly. So it's all about how much time you have, and that's gonna really impact your price that you pay and just the amount of access that you have. So, and you can explain that to your customers too, right? Just the same way, Ben, that you said rate or date. A lot of customers, they don't have that conversation with their brokers, and they should. So,
and you're right. Those are, again, just to reiterate, like these are questions you should always be asking of your customer. If your customer is trying to beat you up on rate, that's usually my opposing argument. Is I'm like, look, that's great. So you want to be on the low end of the market, Jimmy? Yeah. Okay. When's this got to go out? Well, it's got to go out today. Okay. Well, Jimmy, if you want to be on the low end of the market, can you give me 2 more days to move this and I'll find you a cheaper truck? Oh, well, no, it's got to go out today. Okay, well, now you get to explain them after you've given them the choice. They picked the more expensive one. You didn't pick it for them. And you can explain now why that is, just the same way we just did.
Yep.
Now it's not on you, right? You provide access to the market. You don't control it.
That's right. That's it, man. All right, last question. This is a good one. What separates the top brokers from the rest? So when I thought, I mean, we've kind of talked about like you have to be you got to be that elite one. You got to be the one who's adding a little bit more value. And then I thought about it. I was like, well, what as a broker, what makes my carriers or what makes our carriers the top carriers? Right. And it's the same answer as why a customer would think a broker is a good broker. And I think about it's like they're reliable. They're easy to work with. I can get a hold of them very easily. They're just pleasant to do business with. They do what they say when they say they're going to do something. And all those things go right back to a customer, right? Don't promise that you have a truck in the area when you don't. Don't promise that you can be the cheapest rate if you can't. And don't promise that you can do air, ocean, rail, full truck, LTL, expedite if you can't, right? Your reputation just goes out the window there. But, there's a big learning curve that I think that comes with it. And it takes a lot of time to build rapport and relationships with your customers to get to that point. But what do you think on this one?
I mean, definitely what you said, right? So you've got the personality and the relationships, which I think are probably like at the top of that list. And the thing about our industry is it's a very big, small world. I've heard people say, right? It's that like your reputation kind of gets around. People do know who you are. It's not that big of an industry. I mean, it is dollar wise and everything, but like people tend to know who they're dealing with. So your reputation does matter a ton. I was listening to Freightvine actually this afternoon, DAT's podcast, and they interviewed, it's actually the oldest brokerage, I think, in the country. They're third generation. I can't remember the name of the company, but it was interesting because the guy they're interviewing, his grandfather actually started the TIA or was one of the founding members. And he's talking about like how their customers that they've had for like legitimately 30 and 40 years. And he's like, that's something you just don't see in a lot of other industries where like you literally have decades sometimes working with your customers. These relationships really matter. And people like to work with other people they like to work with. It really kind of is that simple in some degree. The other aspect is, you're right. You've got to be ethical. You can't be lying about on-time percentage. You can't be lying when you have a truck. And then, because eventually that shit plays out, right? When they look at your on-time percentage over the year and it's, 90%, but the other broker's at 98, the other broker's at 98 because they're working harder. They're putting better carriers on it. They're maintaining, they're check calling it. Their service levels are better, right? All of their communication is more clear. There are things that I think definitely separate the better brokers from the mediocre ones and definitely the poor ones. Those are, I think, your big ones.
Yeah. And I would tell you too, like, and this goes back to what we said earlier on is always be curious to learn more, right? None of us are an expert in everything. So there's a lot of stubborn people out there that they think they know everything. They don't want to take anybody's advice because they think, oh, I already know everything. And just, there's new regulations that come out. There's new software improvements and new features you can get and just new tools, and be willing to learn about those, because as things develop and change, if you don't change with them and stay up with what's going on in the market, you're going to fall behind very, very quickly. So, and you can also help educate your customer on what's changing as well. And that's going to help build trust and rapport. So that's a good question though. What was the phrase? People do business with those that they know, like, and trust. So not those that lie and are, they're not familiar with and all that bad stuff. So good stuff.
Over a long enough period of time, like bullshit kind of floats to the top. Like people can see it. Like it's not happening. You know what I mean?
Yep. That's a good way to put it, man.
Here and there, but over time, like people are going to notice what's going on, and eventually that's going to play out, and the chickens come home to roost, and you end up with nothing at the end of the day.
For sure.
Other quote I always liked: "Do what's hard, the rest of life becomes easy." If you do what's easy today, the rest of life gets just a little bit harder, right? And every time people try to get to the shortcut to just get the fast money right now or this month or this week, right? It inevitably bites you in the ass. Taking the shortcuts, like whether it's quality, whether it's service, whether it's ethics, eventually, like that money runs out and you're left with no reputation. And it is a ton harder to establish new business relationships with that. What would your old boss say? You had two things: your phone and your reputation.
You got to have two things as a broker. It's your phone and your integrity. And if you lose either one, you're done. Integrity's tough, man. I mean, you make a bad judgment call and you lie one time. you're either going to lose that relationship altogether, or it's really, really hard. It takes a long time to gain that trust back. So
Takes a lifetime to build and a moment to squander.
that's it. Look at this. We're getting
Yeah.
bonus quotes out of Ben today, the Proverbs guy. Good episode. We appreciate you guys with all the questions, and hope you have a good holiday season here. Ben, what do you guys got going on for? Oh wait, isn't it like freezing cold in Florida, or it's going to be freezing cold in Florida?
Yeah, it really is.
We got to talk about this.
I mean, I've been wearing like long pants and like sweatshirts most of this week at night, but it's going down to like 45 Saturday and Sunday. They said it, I mean, it's the coldest winter in Florida in I think 30 years. There have been a couple days here and there since I've lived here where it's gone down to the 40s, but I mean, it's going to be very, very cold. Like
all you brokers out there with a big storm coming through and people taking off for the holidays, go make that money next week.
Yep.
Go ambulance chasing. There's going to be issues out there.
Oh, huge. I mean, as soon like absolutely. You were talking about this at the beginning of the episode. I do most of my business in Chicago. And I'm like, when that city freezes over, I'm like, it's like Christmas, literally and figuratively this year, because everything gets jammed up. The trucks freeze over, they can't get them started. And again, this is just part of, normal winter, but this is going to affect the whole country. So, I mean, you got people that are expecting whether it's 5 loads a day or 50 loads a day to get out of their loading dock. When these trucks start freezing over and these roads start freezing over, they're going to get backed up. It's going to screw up everyone's schedule, and that creates tons of opportunity for our industry.
That's exactly right. So you're going to get a mini surge next week is what I would predict. I mean, they're like the Weather Channel. They weren't like predicting. They were guaranteeing like there's going to be massive power outages. There was going to be massive damage from trees falling down, and you're talking about hurricane force wind gusts mixed with snow.
Yeah,
that's a blizzard, but and it's the whole country, like pretty much the entire, unless you're in like San Diego, like everyone's getting in. I saw Nashville has a predicted wind chill of like negative 17 degrees during this storm. So
I saw Miami might even hit like 38, like it's into the 30s, and that's when
it's like a wind chill advisory or something like that. And I was like, I've never seen that for Florida.
And the other thing is like the iguanas start falling out of the trees. Like as soon as I think it's in the 40s, it might be 45, somewhere in there. Like they don't die, like they wake back up, but like they literally like will just start falling out of the trees. You'll be driving down the road and you'll just like see like an iguana the size of a small dog just falling out of the tree.
So wild.
Yeah.
So wild. So it's funny. My parents just got up from Florida today for like Christmas and whatnot. And they picked a good time to come up because it would have been just as cold down there, it sounds like. So, but they'll get to go back to some nice warm weather.
Speaking you got the ice rink up? I mean,
no, did not do it this year. We just moved in. We had that 7 feet of snow, and then we got like another 2 feet of snow last week. I think what I'm gonna do, if my kids like get into ice skating, I might get like one of those kits where they like store it for you and then they set it up. You just gotta like shovel off the snow and resurface it. But I don't know. What I spent on wood to build it last year, I was like, I could have spent just a little bit more and got the plastic kit and had somebody set it up. But
dude, that sounds fantastic. You can buy a shed, have it just stored in your backyard in your shed.
Well, they'll store it on the companies that you buy them from. They'll store it for you if you want. So they'll bring it out and set it up for you. They'll put the liner down and fill it up with water. And then they'll take it down and store it in the spring. And then if you want, you can hire them, and they'll come out during the year to resurface it, or you can just do it yourself, like shovel up the snow and spray it.
What's the ballpark?
No, you could get them for like $3,000.
Oh,
so yeah, I mean that's like starting. You could spend $10,000 if you wanted to. It's all about the size, and do you get the boards, and do you get the nets and the light. It's like you can go all out if you want, but we'd probably start out with the basic one and go up from there. But that's I think I spent like almost $2,000 between wood and like the liner and my water bill last year. I was like, why don't I just spend another $1,000 and just get an actual kit?
Be done with it.
Get a hole in it, So yeah, good stuff. We'll see.
That's
maybe
awesome.
Next year. But so what are your Christmas plans?
I'm just going to cook and probably not leave our house because it's going to be cold. Usually we go to the ocean, like just go down to the beach for an hour or two, go down. My daughter loves playing in the sand, but at 50 degrees, like I planned on cooking. Like I was going to grill some steaks or something Christmas or make a prime rib. I'm like, I don't even know that I'm going to go do that.
Yeah. Well,
Just going to be cooking an open present, watching movies, hanging out.
There you go. It's always fun, especially with anyone out there in the audience that's got little kids, man. It is a fun day to see all the little kids go crazy with all the presents. So
I'm super excited.
Good stuff. Well, that'll wrap up today's episode. What do we got next? We got one more episode before the end of the year. Topic to be determined. So if you guys got any recommendations, shoot it our way before or at the beginning of the week next week, and we'll consider it and send your questions over too. We'll get those in next week as well. So final thoughts here, Ben.
Whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right.
And until next time, go Bills. That wraps up this episode of Freight 360. Check out the show notes for links to anything that we've referenced on this episode. And make sure to visit us online at freight360.net to see our entire library of episodes, videos, blogs, and more.
And make sure to check us out on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily and weekly tips and content. If you'd like your question answered on the show, fill out the Contact Us form on our site, and we'll see you next week.